Hello and welcome to Church of the Beatitudes, both members and visitors. Life has certainly changed, but there are still some constants in our life, which includes faith and our services. Here at Church of the Beatitudes, we're a progressively minded community that believes that by coming together, we're empowered to make God's love real in tangible ways for others. This pandemic and call for social distancing has certainly changed how we worship. We can't be together right now in person, but we can still connect spiritually. So please join us as we worship virtually.
Good to see you again. Welcome back. Welcome back to Church of the Beatitudes online. I hope you had a great week, and I hope you are looking into the coming week with excitement and adventure. Because let's be honest, living right now is full of adventure. Things are changing so quickly and everything is evolving. And so at times we want a sense of stability, a sense of certainty. I hope that for the next 40 to 45 minutes that this experience, this gathering, will give you that sense of stability. Not because of the words that you hear or the music you listen to, or the images that you see, but what will give you the stability is the mystery of God. That somehow in this experience you will feel that presence. I'm not sure how it will happen for you, but it will. If you're visiting, if this is the first time you've watched us online, welcome to you. You will notice at the bottom of the screen that there will be a number and a hello that you can type and text to that number. This is our opportunity to share with you a little bit about who we are as a church. Right now, we can't hand you anything, so this is the second best thing that we can do. Please, relax, take a deep breath, slowly exhale, and be truly present in this moment as you hear this first song.
You shall rise up with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands. While you rise up with joy, you shall rise up with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands while you rise up with joy.
Arizona Interfaith Power and Light is an interfaith ministry devoted to deepening the connection between ecology and faith. Their goal is to help people of faith recognize and fulfill their responsibility for the stewardship of creation. Specifically, Arizona Interfaith Power and Light campaign is mobilizing a national religious response to global warming while promoting renewable energy efficiency, and conservation. Locally, they're advocating for the Arizona Corporate Commission to adopt more robust renewable energy standards. This year, they are participating in a faith climate justice voter campaign. And the goals of this campaign are to collect 3,000 voters from across the state who agreed to sign a pledge saying that they will vote with climate in mind this November. The link for that pledge you will see momentarily. You can visit the website at www.azipl.org, or you could text, all one word, Faith Voter to 72572. Finally, they believe that the 2020 election is a referendum on the values that will shape our future. How can we renew our fragile democracy? How can we honor the human dignity of every person? And what policies will prioritize the common good and confront global pandemics that remind us of our interdependence? These questions require a societal examination of conscience. Many of the defining moral issues of our time are on the ballot in fall 2020. These are faltering democratic institutions, extreme inequality of wealth and power, the existential threat of climate change, cruel immigration policies that tear families apart, mass incarceration that devastates communities of color, senseless violence, and threats to global public health and our security. These challenges are daunting, but we can and must prove that we can move forward in a spirit of hope and resist despair and cynicism. For generations, people of faith have been at the forefront of struggles for justice, leading seemingly unwinnable movements, from the abolition of slavery to women's suffrage and the civil rights movement. These religious activists have proven that faith and action are powerful catalysts for social change. The challenges we confront today require us to envision who we wish to be as a nation moving forward. And when we resist this culture of exclusion, we affirm that all of us are created in the sacred image of God. To download this voter reflection guide, please visit faithinpubliclife.org. This reflection guide is intended to spur discussion around the dinner table, in Zoom spaces, or even through storytelling webinars hosted by Arizona Interfaith Power and Light. For more information about these events, please visit Arizona Interfaith Power and Light on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now is the time for us to, more than ever, or maybe it's the same, it just seems like more than ever, to put our spirit into action. We are called to love one another. We are called to put God's love first and make it real. This is the time to do so. I encourage you to join me and hopefully 3,000 more people in the state of Arizona to sign this pledge.
A new heaven, a new earth. We have been through so much rain and so much sorrow. Words falling on a vagrant wind. Our tongues reciting empty passages in the valley of our deepest fears. We spent 40 days in a Lent like no other. An Easter where Christ failed to resurrect. Now we've moved into deeper shadow to see friends vanish, hear melody turned to dirge. Yet even shadow, there is illumination as we hear the cries for justice, for equality. We have learned to love in different ways, to embrace our humanity in the midst of being unable to embrace. With a reborn sense of the sacredness of life, we've been given a blessing in this hour of cosmic change. The blessed gift to re-envision the holiness of our brothers and our sisters, the frailty of our own humanity.
We sail above the weather. We search the ocean floor. We rival our creation, still yearning for more. But can we fly together, a migratory bee? How wonderful if that's what God could see. A single voice in whispered prayer can only pray to travel there. But all as one, we sound the everlasting sound and sing our salvation. Aloft and information, a migratory bee. How wonderful if that's what God could see.
Our scripture reading is Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 23. God's angry displeasure erupts as acts of human mistrust and wrongdoing and lying accumulate as people try to put a shroud over truth. But the basic reality of God is plain enough. Open your eyes, and there it is. By taking a long and thoughtful look at what God has created, people have always been able to see what their eyes as such can't see. Eternal power, for instance, and the mystery of divine being. So nobody has a good excuse. What happened was this. People knew God perfectly well, but when they didn't treat God like God, refusing to worship God, they trivialized themselves into silliness and confusion, so there was neither sense nor direction left in their lives. They pretended to know it all, but were illiterate regarding life. They traded the glory of God who holds the world for cheap figurines you can buy at a roadside stand. Thanks be to God.
The mystery of nature. Despite everything that we have learned from science, there still remains this gap between what we know and what remains a mystery. Nature is full of these. If you notice on your TV screen or your iPad or phone screen, whatever device you're watching this, you'll see this picture that will pop up. And there you will notice the Devil's Kettle Falls. This is in Minnesota. And you will notice that the fall in the middle is literally just coming regular, and you can see it fall all the way down and join into the river. On the other side, the fall comes in and it falls into this large kettle, this large hole. The mystery is we don't know where that water comes out. They have tried different ways of explaining it, and in 2017, they actually came up with a way, but there still remains a question. For example, if you throw 100 ping pong balls into this hole, which they have, by the way, and they had written on those balls, if found, please call and a reward. If you throw those in there, they never come out. And so even though they came up with this theory in 2017, it still left questions. What happens to objects that fall into this abyss and they never come out? Another mystery is in Poland. It's called the Crooked Forest. And if you'll notice again on your screen, you'll see that in this particular area of the forest, the trees, instead of going straight up, they go to the side, and then they begin to come up. Again, another mystery that we cannot completely understand. And there's more. There's the Catatumba lightning. There is the ball lightning. There are the star jelly. All of these are different mysteries in nature that we simply do not understand. And in living in July of 2020, we have again experienced a mystery. We're learning more about it, but there's elements that we still don't know, and that's COVID-19. COVID-19, scientists literally throughout the world are endeavoring to understand this virus, and understanding it will enable them to either come up with a treatment plan or a vaccine. I think one of the things that's frustrated for us who are not scientists is we're continually learning new things and asked to do different things because of the information that science continues to gather. Just like global warming. It's a phenomenon that's taking place, but we don't have all the answers of why and how can it be stopped and can it be reversed. We continue to live in a world where nature has hidden secrets that we just don't understand quite yet. And that feeling that we have inside, that feeling of uncertainty, that feeling of not being in control, That is an emotion that resonates with our ancient ancestors, the first Homo sapiens, because they experienced those emotions. As they became aware of their environment, they began to realize that there were things they couldn't understand. And the reason why they couldn't understand is because their brain was slowly developing. And at some point in this development, their minds were able to begin to seek and question, to be curious. They actually learned to ask the question, why? Why do these things happen? What is the cause behind these things? And that development in their mind allowed them to create what we call animation. They begin to see nature, objects, living and unmoving objects. They begin to see as being animated, that they possessed a spirit, and that there were spirit beings residing within them. So, for example, if they looked at these different forces that threatened them in nature, as they considered these, they begin to realize that if there's this spirit behind them, this spirits or gods, they could begin to understand the cause for these. For example, why does it rain a lot at times, and why does it rain very little at times? But these gods, these spirits that they created, they don't resemble ours very much today. You see, back then, their view of these spirits and gods, they weren't overly concerned with human beings. They didn't care about the affairs of humanity. They weren't omniscient. They weren't all-knowing. They were just limited to their particular areas. The god of thunder was concerned about thunder. And how you reacted to that and how you related to that might have some impact, but beyond that scope, they were kind of on their own. So again, think about the evolution of the human species, the human or Homo sapiens. As their brain continued to evolve and as they begin to move into different places on our planet, they begin to shift from a hunter-gathering group of people to more agrarian. And what we mean by that is they begin to, instead of going out and killing animals, they begin to domesticate animals. Over time, they developed crops, and they developed flocks, which they could then use not only for food, but they could use in different ways to care for their for their crops. And in this process, they begin to realize that by coming together, they could share these things. For the first time, you could actually own something. You could produce a crop, and its yield was yours. But what do you do with it all? Well, you could barter, you could trade. And so clans begin to join other clans and form tribes. And tribes came together and formed larger communities. And over time, these communities would join together and form city-states. And with this evolving that took place, their environment began to shift. And instead of living purely in nature, they began to live in more urban settings. Their city-states had walls that would protect them. They could return to them and live in them in comfort and then go out and care for their flocks and raise their crops. During this period of time, as their environment changed, their ideas of God also began to evolve further. Initially, these gods, each of them was given a particular force of nature that they were linked with. But again, with time, that changes. And they actually begin to see a God as the force of nature. And at first, this was a monotheistic God, but it's a God above all the other gods. This God, however, was now interested in the affairs of human beings. when you think about a bunch of Homo sapiens living together, how they get along becomes important. And so they begin to realize that a God, a high God, who was in charge of humanity, who was interested in human affairs, who was concerned about human justice, as you begin to experience that, all of a sudden, this God began to be very involved and engaged in the world, and in particular, human beings. This is the setting in which we find Genesis 12, and as it continues on throughout the rest of the Bible. It's an agrarian society. The God that calls Abraham is one of these high gods. He is a God above all the other gods. And Abraham is asked to leave his city-state and become a traveler who moves over into Palestine. And in that exposure to other groups of people, he's exposed to their gods. Again, as time continues to pass, this one God becomes the particular God. And it's called particular monotheism. So instead of allowing one high God and all these other gods, particular monotheism says, no, there is just one God, and the rest of them are false gods. And this God is in charge of everything. So when you're feeling insecure, when you're feeling threatened, when there's a drought, when there's floods, when there's an external threat from other people groups, you would turn to your God. And for Israel, that God was called either Elohim or Yahweh. And you would turn to this God for support, for a sense of control. But it was very important that you obeyed this God. Because if you obeyed the God, then God would bless you. If you disobeyed the God and you did immoral acts, then God would curse you. This is why Deuteronomy is so interesting. Because in the book of Deuteronomy, you do literally have the blessings and the curses. You behave this way, you act toward each other this way, you act this way toward me, I will bless you. However, if you do these things, then I will curse you. So laws become really important. During this period of time, another transition that takes place with regards to God is no longer directly attached to nature. In the hunter-gathering phase period of time, the gods and nature are linked like this. But by the time we go into the agrarian society and as we move forward from there, all of a sudden these gods are no longer tied to nature, and instead they begin to have human characteristics. They become more like human beings. That's why we find in the Old Testament that God has a dwelling place. At first, in Exodus, we find God living up on a mountain. And then later on, God lives in a tent, a tabernacle. And then later on in the Old Testament, God is moved from this traveling God to a God who is happy just staying in one location again, and that's Jerusalem, the temple. And to keep this God happy, because you will make mistakes, they have Leviticus, which tells you what to do for these different offenses to God. You see, it's all about keeping equilibrium, this balance. So as you face these threats of nature and from other human beings, you know what to do to keep God on your side. Fast forward 2,000 to 3,000 years to July of 2020. We are still worshiping that God. It's almost as if that God got frozen in time. It became static. And one of the reasons that happened was when we canonized these holy writings. When we took all these different writings and we put a front cover and a back cover on it and called it a book, a Bible, all of a sudden God became stuck in that period of time. And what happens is, as we learn more things through science and through literature and the arts, it creates a conflict. Because our knowledge at times conflicts with this God from thousands of years ago. And so when we find mysteries today, for example, COVID-19, we shouldn't be surprised that we respond to this mystery, this external threat, in much the same way that the ancients did in the Old Testament. "62% of Christians believe, either strongly or somewhat strongly, that in the COVID-19, this virus, there is a lesson that God is trying to teach humanity." 62%. Now, they don't see this necessarily as a judgment from God, but there is a lesson that we are to learn from. And that makes sense if you see God as being in control and very engaged in the affairs of humanity. Yeah, things don't happen just by chance. The ultimate cause of everything is God. And that's why 55% of Christians pray to God that they will be protected from the virus. Somehow they believe by praying to God that God will create some type of protection for them so that they will not have the virus. Could it be that one of the reasons, and again, I don't know, but this one came to my mind as I was preparing this week, could it be that one of the reasons why some churches were so adamant about continuing to worship in person during COVID-19 was because they believed that they had to worship, that somehow our worship impacts God? How is that any different than the rituals and rites that were performed in the Old Testament? A way of connecting with God. However, we continue as a society to see these ideas of God and what science is teaching us and what we're learning from the geology and ecology. We're seeing all of a sudden that this is happening. We keep running into each other. And more people are asking if God is even relevant today. Just like there was a transition in an understanding of God from a hunter-gatherer to an agrarian, could it be in the evolution of Homo sapiens that we are at the very beginning, the cusp of a transition in our understanding of God? Maybe that's one of the reasons why more and more people are walking away from churches, is because the image of God from the past isn't working anymore in their lives today. They mentally just can't get there anymore. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we're seeing people talk about God as energy, as a life force. Could it be that we are slowly in the development in this digital age, that we are evolving again as Homo sapiens into a new way of living, and with that, religion is coming along? But that's scary. Let's be honest. Orthodoxy works. You believe this, you pass it on to the next generation, they pass it on to the next generation. It provides stability. It provides certainty. So when you die, you know what will happen. But are we in the midst of this wave that is transitioning us, not only as human beings, but also in our understanding of God? Could it be that we are now beginning to understand what the ancients understood, and that's mystery? Perhaps we are becoming a little bit better at learning to live with mystery. Maybe we'll be a little bit more tentative in talking about God's will. When things happen, instead of looking to God for an explanation, maybe we'll begin to look and use the tools that we've created to find the answer. And when we can't find the answer, we learn to stand back and be amazed by the mystery of what is there. I don't know the answer for you, but I will share with you just very quickly that is what happened to me. I began to see God as a mystery. And at first, that was very unsettling. But over time, I've learned to just sit in that mystery. It's almost a kind of a meditative state of being, of allowing my mind to just grow quiet and just be aware of my surroundings. This is in particular powerful when you're out in nature. I don't know. But I do know that nothing stays the same. Life changes. There continues to be mysteries of nature and of humanity that we just don't understand yet. Perhaps we need to put God in that category now. God is the mystery that we do not fully comprehend. I encourage you to think about these things, and in particular, ask, how does this apply to how I'm going to live my life, not only in the midst of COVID-19, but for the years to come? Amen.
Many of you know that Pastor Tony has been challenging me over the last several months in my growth on this member and discernment journey to embrace prayer. I've grown away from prayer for many years for lots of reasons. But what I have found myself doing is either when I'm in nature or when I'm reading poetry, I, in fact, am engaging in prayer. So today's prayer, I encourage you to join me in this poem titled A Word for Freedom by Latif Nazimai. Let's kiss water, the root of civilization, a word for freedom. I'm in love with water, with roaring and restless rivers that are not seduced by trees nor captured by jungles. They flow day and night and carry on forever. Let's praise rivers that lust for flowing, for searching, for a heart of temptation that know what message water delivers to stone, the question water asks from quiet coasts. Passers-by, for a long time, the river has been constrained in an old robe on our street and thrown into a well. Water wars with the well, water in the mind of a tree, water in the solitude of a cup, water in the memory of a flower pot, inconsolable. I had a wonderful dream on Friday night. I dreamed the river ran free, that on its roaring horse it rode over stones past the border of farms. Amen.
Joyful, joyful, we adore you, God of glory, God of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before you, opening to the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the storms of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. All your works with joy surround you, earth and heaven reflect your rays. Stars and angels sing around you, center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, vale and mountain, fiery meadow, flashing sea, chanting bird and flowing fountain, teach us what our praise should be. Mortals join the mighty chorus which the morning stars began. Boundless love is reigning o'er us, reconciling race and clan. Ever singing, move we forward, faithful in the midst of strife. Joyful music leads us onward in the triumph song of life.
Our time together has drawn to an end. As you go into this next week, Church of the Beatitudes would like to give you a gift. we'd like to give you a blessing. And so may you be blessed with serenity. It's the serenity to accept the way that our world is right now, and the serenity to accept your life the way it is right now, and the serenity to know that there are certain things that no matter how hard you try, you will not be able to change. But then may you also be blessed with courage. Courage to know that there are things that you can change. And may you be blessed with the wisdom that will accompany that courage so that you will know what they are. What things that you can do to make a difference in the world of nature. What things that you can do in making a difference in the world of humanity. And then may you be blessed with a spirit of love. A spirit of love that at times can be so easily oppressed because of stuff that's within us and stuff that is around us. But may you be blessed with that spirit of love so that despite all of those other factors, that love will grow and continue to come out of who you are. And that during this week, you will be able to make love real for those around you.
Make God's love real, make God's love real, today, tomorrow, and every day. Make God's love real.
Hello, my name is not Janelle. I know, the hairdo made the difference for you, didn't it? Well, because we don't look alike, church life is not going to be alike. Because there's no way that I can even get close to doing the fine job that Janelle does. No one does better. All right, so what's happening? Well, first of all, because we can't literally come together and join each other, we're stuck with Zoom. And there is a reality called Zoom fatigue. Literally, psychologists are now writing papers about it. And so I can understand that if you have been digitally burned out, I get it. At times I feel it too. If you've never tried it, however, I would encourage you at least once to look at the emails that Janelle sends out every week and try one of those Zoom events. For some of you, you might enjoy kind of a little bit more lighthearted, easygoing, and that's the midweek Wednesday at 6 o'clock. That's that opportunity. For those of you who want to maybe stretch your mind a little bit, hear other ideas, have thoughts thrown at you that maybe you never even considered, well, we have a class for you, and it's called Ruminate, and that's at 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings. So either one of those are viable options that you could try at least once. If you're a regular and you might know of someone that might enjoy one of those experiences, please feel free to invite them to participate. For our younger people, it's really hard because we can't be present and we can't move around as much because Zoom is limited. However, we're trying our best, and Denny is doing a fabulous job in this particular area. And so there are two classes for our young people. For those between the ages of first grade and sixth grade, on Sundays at 4 o'clock, we have our virtual summer camp. For those of you that are older, from 7th grade up to high school, we have another virtual summer camp, and that's again on Sundays at 7 o'clock. And then for those of you who are in that 20, early 30 age, there's an amazing group that is meeting on Sundays at 5:30. And they are talking about virtues. So I would encourage you to try one of these. And I especially encourage you to come back next week and watch Church Life because the amazing Janelle will return. Enjoy the rest of your week.
We'd like to thank you for joining our service today, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully in person sometime soon at a worship on campus. And first-time visitors, you are invited and welcome anytime. These are tough economic times with tough economic decisions for all of us, but the church needs our contributions, our gifts, whatever we are able to give in order for the church to continue its mission and its message. And the church is making it as convenient as possible. You could go online with a one-time gift, go to beatitudeschurch.org, or you could even set up automatic payments through your bank. Whatever's easiest and whatever you can contribute would obviously be greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call the church office. And we'll see you virtually again for another worship next Sunday at 10 a.m. Beatitudes Church, making God's love real.